Welcome to the ManTFup podcast. I'm KimmyB.
And Lenny.
And this week, another incredible guest coming from the Midwest. Hey, I like that rhymed. Our girl, Harle Jo. Harle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Now, I mentioned you in last week's episode, obviously, because we were talking to your good friend, Joanna, and very excited to have you with us today. Again, another person that Lenny found on TikTok. Len, you're becoming a great, what is that called? Like...
Internet sleuth?
An internet sleuth, but no, like there's a person usually on like late night shows that the talent booker.
Yes.
Right? Is that like this you might have missed your calling.
Maybe. I don't know.
No? Okay, well they're both here, but they were, because of you.
Yeah.
Okay. You good?
I'm good.
This is gonna be fun.
Talent booker? I don't know.
Oh, do you want a more impressive title?
That's
what it is, Harle. I will find a better title by the
better fucking word for
by
that.
the end of this podcast. First of all, they get paid. Like, let's also talent scouts.
Scouts is what they are.
Okay, but also the people that like book from films, like make a grip, bro. So like they're important people. Like they get credits.
Yeah, they work for me.
They work for you.
Yes.
I didn't know we had those. I'm just saying. I clearly.
If we had one,
they
would be working.
Okay.
For
well,
me.
in a couple.
I'm not looking for a new career, by the way.
What is your
as
career,
a talent
Lenny?
Booker?
What is your career?
I don't have a
career. Do you
career.
know? I didn't think
I
so.
don't have a career.
All right. Now listen, Harle, on the other hand, definitely does have a career. You work in social work is your background, yes?
Yes. So I have a bachelor's of social work. I only worked in like proper casework social work for a couple of months in housing, and let me tell you, it's rough. The people that do that have a heart of gold. So I still kind of use my degree. I am now a fundraiser for a local nonprofit.
Yeah, what you said is actually crypto-based?
No. So that's a leg of my position. A primary part of my position is normal U.S. currency, getting that dollars in so we can feed kiddos. But a leg of my position is to run all crypto-based projects at the nonprofit I work at, yes.
Wow. So, I mean, I don't know how anybody does social work, honestly, especially in 2022 where we are just faced with so many different challenges coming off of 2 years of a pandemic, coming off of job loss, dealing with inflation. There's so many pervasive issues throughout our country and our culture that are, in my opinion, I do not speak for everybody on the ManTFup podcast, that are systemically ingrained in in the foundation of our nation. So kudos to you for even a day of that work, because I don't know that I could even make it. Did you deal with families, or I know you said housing?
Yeah, so I did a couple different things. I had a handful of internships in the criminal justice system. My big favorite one was my time at the prosecutor's office in the victim witness unit. So I worked underneath a MSW who specifically worked with victims of sexual abuse or domestic abuse. And then after I got my undergrad, I got a position working, actually kind of running a housing-based program that served 22 counties specifically for veterans at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness, and doing anything that I could to help them gain and maintain stability in their life. So whether that was furthering their education, connecting them to benefits that they're qualified for but are not, getting them in a more stable housing position, career changes, all of it. Any problem that my clients brought to me and they wanted help on, I would dig into it and I would help them to the most that I could. But at the end of the day, I kind of felt like a cog in the machine because my program was funded by the VA, and there was a lot of constraints put on that. There wasn't the funding that I felt like I needed to really make changes in my client's life. So when my veterans have a inherent distrust of the system, and I felt like I was just becoming that, because when they expressed discontent towards me, I felt that, because I'm like, no, I know I should be doing more, but I'm cuffed to this system as much as you are.
That's so sad to me, that our veterans, who are literally putting their life on the line to serve, protect, defend this system, are the ones who are most frequently let down by it.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's crazy, especially when you see people that claim to love this great country of ours, and want to raise and hang flags at every given opportunity, but are not fighting for the rights of our veterans.
Absolutely. It was rough to see, and every story is unique, and so there's millions of our amazing veterans coming out of the military service and not being supported in the way that they need to be supported. Obviously, there's people that can thrive after they come out of military service, but the military does a big disservice to our veterans, especially after they exit the military. They're not given the support that they need to succeed.
I have to ask you, what would you like to see change? So, like, what are some of the programs? Because Lenny and I think we've discussed at length things that we feel our vets deserve. I'd be interested to hear what somebody who's actually worked with them on like a day-to-day basis and knows what they do and do not have access to.
Yeah, I was only in it for a couple months, so I want to be careful of what I speak on because there's definitely things that I'm not as educated or versed in. But one thing I can speak to is our veterans. The VA isn't as great as some people like to say. Oh, you get out now, you have health care for life. It's not really that way. A lot of the times, it's only veterans can only get coverage for the things that were sustained during their time of service, and they have to prove that. So something like, their bad knees, bad hips from jumping out of planes, and the government's like, oh, no, you probably got that from something else. That's genetic. But it's, our veterans jumping out of planes, and they need, like, knee replacements. Or, tinnitus is a big one of, like, oh, this is in my shooting year, and I have a constant ringing in my ear. I need treatment for it, but the VA won't cover it because it needs to be proved. I did some volunteer work with it's a veteran treatment court in the county that I was living and working in, and it was an amazing thing because they recognized as when veterans exit the military and transition into civilian life, there isn't that support, and a lot of times veterans will turn to things like substances, or they'll have mental health issues and they don't have the support for that, which then will lead them to having a higher likelihood of committing crimes. Well, what's the systemic cause to that? That's the drug abuse, or that's the mental health issues. And so they'll go through these treatment courts and actually have those items that cause the crime be treated. And so it's a very holistic way of giving our veterans dignity. And I'd really like to see some more programs like that, outside of the criminal justice system, in the housing system, in the healthcare system.
Let's get to it before they end up in front of a judge.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. Len and I have talked, like, I'm a firm believer. I think if you are willing to give your life for this country, that when you come back or have finished your service, you should have housing for life. Like, I think you should have medical benefits for life, and actually quality medical benefits for life.
I think this is one of the subjects that is not going to need to find a middle ground. Whether we do something about it or not, that's really not up to us. As I want to say we could vote somebody in that was going to change it, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, but I think people that are running on the platform of loving and supporting our vets,
I get it,
aren't doing anything about it either.
But I think I would bet that 90% of your average American people is totally in support of taking care of our veterans.
And I think that's right, but I think that a lot of people don't understand what that means. A lot of people that are like, yes, pro-military, support our veterans, they don't understand the almost socialism that needs to happen to support our veterans when they come out. And a lot of people are adverse to putting the funding towards our actual American civilians or our veterans to support them in their greatest time of need. And so a lot of people want to quickly call that socialism. Is that socialism, or is that supporting our community? Our government exists to protect and serve the people in the country.
It should be an extension of our military.
Facts. Like, that's the bigger thing, is that it should really be lifelong
Yeah, it should
service.
never be taken away from that aspect. It shouldn't be converted into civilian. You're a veteran. You're in the military for the rest of your life
until you're gone, which means you have access.
They should get the same service that an active duty.
That's not always that great either, though.
Well,
that's factual.
And I believe that.
So some people do not like to go to the VA hospital.
I believe that. But I know.
But how does that happen? Like, how is that not a priority? I guess that's to me is the bigger question. And here I am. But again, I sit more on the left. We all know this. And I'm like, yo, if I pay I know, but I give my money. I give my money freely. Go ahead, but do something useful with it. Like, that's all I'm saying. And that's the thing that frustrates me is I feel like I'm more outraged that the money that I am giving, like, why is it not going to these people? Like, that's the part that bugs me, because my side, if we have to pick sides, is usually the side that's not really supportive, right? We were the ones that were protesting Vietnam, which was really the start of the kind of disenfranchisement and the degradation of those who have served, right? Like, because before that, if you served in the military, you are a fucking hero, period. World War II, even our Korean vets that came back, because we knew about POWs. We knew what they went through, right, while they were there. By the time Vietnam rolled around, though, these guys came back and they were spat on. Yeah. They were treated they were treated worse than what you would find on the bottom of your shoe. And our government did nothing to support them, and they haven't gotten the support back. There was a little rallying, during Desert Storm, and then after 9/11, but then people got fed up again, and now it's get them out. And I think there's more respect for our military, but the folks that sit there and literally base their entire platform around love of this country and want to pitch a fit when people take a knee during the national anthem, and it's so disrespectful to the men. No, you know what's disrespectful is when a man or a woman comes back and has a ringing in their ear from firing a fucking gun for 8 years in a war zone, that they can't get treatment because they can't prove that it came from that and not their kid clapping too loud next to them. Like, that's wild to me. Yep. That's absolutely wild that they have any burden of proof to what's wrong with them. Oh, cancer. Well, I don't know. Did you get mesothelioma from building Navy ships, or was it from all that smoking you did? Like, who cares? Treat the man. Give him chemo. I don't care.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Well, it's okay. But it's a health insurance. Everybody has. If you have health insurance, you understand that no health insurance is good. And the VA is basically health insurance.
No, but
it's a health insurance company that is funded by the government and doesn't ever make any money.
Yeah, but Medicaid and Medicare sound to get better care than our vets.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I grew up in pretty immense poverty, and so I was on Medicaid for my entire childhood. That is the only thing that our family could afford, only way that I would receive health care. So I was on Medicaid through college. I didn't have the option to be on a parent's health care. And I had a fantastic, not everyone has a positive experience of that, but I personally, I had a lot of doctors who were in network. I had everything fully treated, and it was pretty fucking fantastic. Our veterans don't get that same dignity and respect, and they served our country. Many of them, what's the saying, that they write a blank check up to and their life to the U.S. government of, like, I am here to protect and serve this country, and they don't get that same dignity when they come back to the States, and it's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
And I think the other thing, too, for anybody watching or listening, I know for me, because I've done a lot with, United Way, which has, a pretty powerful kind of vet network, and some other, even the VA here in South Florida. And it's still something that I battle with. When I think of veterans, I still think of an older person, right? I still think of, I don't want to say World War II, but I still think Korea, I still think Vietnam. And it's like, there are so many vets right now suffering that are younger than I am, right? That are in their 30s with their whole life left to lead, suffering from severe PTSD, dealing with major mental health issues that they probably would not have had they not seen the things that they saw or had to do some of the things that they had to do, right? And again, it's what you sign up for. I'm not taking away from that. But they should have every resource and tool provided for them when they come back and they are trying to reassimilate into quote unquote civilian life. And I love what you said about that. It should be a lifelong career, and many who serve and are enlisted to career length, but even still, they're 40 when they get out.
Yeah.
Your career time is 20 years. And if you sign up at 18, you're 38 with literally the rest of your adulthood.
Yeah. And when I say career, I mean, they should have the health care that's provided to active duty soldiers the rest of their life.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that they have to stay enlisted. Yep. They just need to.
But I think even the job network should be there. Like, if you worked, I don't want to say construction, but if you worked a road crew, because we know when you serve in the military, there's hundreds of different jobs, right, that you can kind of specialize in. You have obviously ground forces. You have people who are on the front lines. That's one thing. But then you have tech people. You have folks that do radio. Hello, good morning, Vietnam. That shit is real. I could probably go serve and they'd put me on some sort of, broadcast duty or something. But whatever that skill set is, I wish that there was a way for them to come back and be able to utilize it. Like we were talking about, even construction, infrastructure, right? This is a country where we have decades worth of work to be done, literally. Like, we have an Army Corps of Engineers. We have men and women that come back that have gone to school, right, on the military's dime, that could be putting that to work, but we haven't figured out how to make the system work for everybody.
And we talked about school protection.
Yeah.
That's another, that's another area. They're trained by our military. Who's more qualified?
Except
the
now
cops
they want,
certainly
now
aren't.
they want them to be teachers with no sort of,
That's a different background.
yeah, curriculum or area.
Yeah, I don't know about teachers, but security.
You want to be a football coach? You want to be a football coach in security? Cool.
Yeah, but,
like, you know what I'm saying? But
security around schools is very important.
1,000%.
You don't want to. People are like, oh, well, they don't work for the government anymore, so why should they get this? Because it's a bad.
Because they were willing to die.
Yes, it's a bad.
That you could get up and say some stupid.
It's a bad thing. But again, I think 90% of the people in this country would probably agree that they need to be taken care of.
Then why isn't it happening?
Because there's no money in it. We've already talked this.
Yeah.
Everything we talk about on this show goes right back to
I get it, but how is there no money? Like, literally, if we're talking infrastructure, right? That's just residual. Like, that now, if I'm paying you on your military salary, so now maybe I don't have to. Maybe I don't have to. What is it called? De-enlist, unenlist? How do you? If you wanted to step away,
discharged.
Well, yeah, but you get discharged.
Yeah.
But if I ask, say I want to,
well, typically you have a contract that you work through, and so you can get to the end of the contract
and say I don't
have
want to
discharge.
be up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And they get discharged.
You don't want to re-enlist yet.
So what I'm saying is, if I don't want to necessarily, I don't want to go back to Afghanistan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just giving this as an example. I realize we have tried to remove ourselves from there,
yes.
but I don't necessarily want to re-enlist to be on a front, but I would love to re-enlist if I had the ability to do something for my community and stay in the military. So maybe I can be on a military construction crew, or maybe I can, do something if we had military-based hospitals, right? So you have privatization, but we can also have, hospitals. We pay people. I have probably 3 people in my life that served in order to go to medical school. And they're ER doctors now. They had incredible, obviously, in the field training because they were deployed multiple times. But they're amazing. And, they obviously speak highly of their experience, but they've come out and been able to get very good jobs following their service or their enlistment period.
I mean, you have the Corps of Engineers, which, is
But they're still
military.
enlisted, right?
Yeah, they're still enlisted. But, I mean, I think if you try and take military personnel and create a something on American soil to place that military personnel, it's going to be construed by people as an extension of the military that you're expanding on our soil.
I don't think so. I think it eliminates
training them for private sector, that's a different story.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, if we're talking about just infrastructure alone, construction, welding, things of that nature, right? That eliminates the corruption of private entities bargaining and bartering for jobs, especially if we're talking about interstates and things like that. I'm not going to get
there's
into
no money in it. There's
also
no money in it.
A lot of corruption in the military. There's a lot of hands and a
everywhere.
lot of pockets. Yeah, it is everywhere.
Everywhere.
And
I mean, that's one of the biggest industries in this country is military. So, I mean, what are you going to do?
So why not keep them enlisted longer and give them a livable wage and housing and good health care? Geez, sounds like what used to be the American
keeping them
dream as a
enlisted
job.
longer versus them wanting, a lot of people go into the military at 18 years old to get money for college so that they can move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty predatory. They'll have recruiters set up at high schools, and they'll be starting to talk to 15, 16 years old, like, hey, when you're 17, when you're 18, I'm going to sign you up. You're going to do this, and so a lot of recruiters are heavily targeting young kids with the promise of college education. And I was actually sought after with the National Guard because I knew some people in the circle, and they're like, yeah, we know you're struggling with pay for college. Let's get you enlisted. We'll pay for it. With a 10-year contract or with a long contract. And so it's actually kind of predatory the way that recruitment happens at that level because they target communities and kiddos that they know might not have a way to get out of whatever circumstance.
Oh, 1,000%. And they also go for, I hate to say it, but delinquent children. Like,
absolutely.
They'll go after, kids with truancy records.
Listen,
I
have a little bit of an issue with with the predatory connotation. It's if you have kids that are troubled, or you have kids that can't afford college, or you have this, and they're getting an opportunity to do it, is it predatory, or is it a leg up, or is it, I have a problem with that kind of stuff. And it's funny because we were talking about this earlier. She's very young, and just the age difference between her and her friend, you can see a clear difference in, certain feelings on certain things and certain words being used, and between me, I knew a lot of kids that were grateful they could do it. You have friends who are doctors. That
I wanted to go to, I wanted to go to the Air Force Academy or Annapolis. So.
I get it, but to use the word,
and I have family that served. But.
And this is me, and it's not, it's the feeling that we're starting to get about everything. When you change it from the recruiters are, kind of pushing and they're going after students who they know, it's.
But you realize they did that in the 80s with Top Gun, like.
So the
have
government
you seen
actually
those statistics? Like literally, they saw enlistment go up like 400%.
Well, there's an
after
area,
Top Gun came out.
There is a section in the U.S. government that will partner with movie productions and will provide like equipment to certain movie productions
Absolutely.
if they feel as though this will lead to higher recruitments. It's a business.
The NFL as well. Like that's where the irony of what was being said about players. Like the NFL is so ingrained with the U.S. military. I know more players that have literally gone on military transport and spent time in hot zones with active duty people than any American out here yelling and screaming about them taking a knee. When you want to talk about guys who have seen what our men and women on the front line sacrifice and appreciate it, these are these guys. But the military was nowhere near as prevalent. You didn't see the big flags. You didn't see all the honorees, at the games until they signed a big fat deal, advertisement deal with the league. And then all of a sudden everything was, very pro-military and all that. So I understand that it's a business, but I'm not going to lie. I like knowing that we have a powerful military. It's one of the things that has built us. And if, again, it's like saying, I'm a supporter of law enforcement, not bad apples. You know this, and you know how I feel about social justice and justice reform, and that it is systemic and it is ingrained, and there are major sweeping changes that need to happen. But I can also look at it from a business perspective and go, if we decide to defund the police, that's millions of people out of jobs. That's just crazy town. This is one of the biggest employers in our nation.
Not only that, it's stupidity. We should give them
clearly.
We should give them more money for training.
And also do better mental health checks and provide them with resources, and let's pay attention and let's do better analysis. Let's bring in some, folks who can break down the numbers and realize this guy is probably going to be a problem. How do I know this? Well, because he's got 72, civilian complaints against him. It might be time to put him to pasture. But I believe in our military. I don't want to say that I'm a fan of war. That's not what I'm talking about. But I like that we have been a military power. It's something that I think we rest our laurels on. I'm disgraced and disgusted that we don't take better care of our vets and we don't give them more options and they don't have more provisions and resources and tools. But I also know that, we're at a place where we won't be able to field a military to protect this country for much longer because we're too fat, we're too stupid, and we're too...
That's why we're keeping our guns.
But this is literally somebody said
that's happening. The military is having a harder time recruiting people because there's less and less young individuals that meet the standards that they're looking for, particularly in the areas of weight and obesity and physical ability. But they're looking at changing that. If a tech person doesn't have the ability to run 5 miles under how many ever minutes, they're going to be sitting at a desk anyway. So shifting with the understanding of whatever office that they will be serving.
But that's a scary place to be at.
Yeah, that's
isn't it? I would like for our military to be fit.
They've
got a really heavy
one of them.
pack on their back.
Let me tell you something. When they wipe out the base, they're coming to the fucking radio.
There's so many desk jobs in the military. So if we're having a hard time recruiting people, particularly people in the tech area, because military is becoming more and more tech.
Facts.
Why do we have this standard that is high physical? So why don't we just change that from people that are in need to have that high physicality, people that are boots on the ground, the whole Marines kind of need that, but people that are in tech jobs, people that are operating the drones, in the United States, do they really need to be able to run so many miles? Because their entire military career is going to be set at a desk anyway. I can understand this perspective. We want a strong military, but we can be strong in different areas. We can be physically strong, and we can be technologically strong. And those are very two different things, and that might mean shifting our perspective of what the entirety
So what
of
do you tell all those kids at boot camp who see Fat Boy over there eating donuts while they're running the course? Oh, he's just gonna have a joystick.
I'm saying that we can have standards.
It doesn't make
we
sense.
can have standards. They can just look different.
Or legitimately, why are we not recruiting talent? Like, why are we not identifying a Joanna coming out of, you know, an incredible university with a degree in engineering?
We are.
But why are we not the Googles? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like that's what it needs to look like.
Are
we?
They're recruited.
So then we're only shitting on the people that went into a war zone? Is that what you're telling me?
No, I'm talking about recruiting. You said recruiting. If you think that our military is not recruiting the top of the top as much as they can, they are.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is outside of that military sphere. So you've got people that go to Annapolis and West Point and the Air Force Academy. You've got kids at the Citadel. I mean, there's your military, there's your, you know, your officer and a gentleman types, right? Like there are people who were born and bred for this. But then there are people who, you know, go and are brilliant and are looking at the private sector or whatever, because that's where a lot of our military, when they leave, where do they go? They go to defense private sector, right?
Yeah,
or they go and they
work
in some,
they're being recruited by the military to go there. You know, the military is just like the recruiter out at the high school football game.
I get it, but then
they're at MIT, but they're not taking them into the military. They're taking them to Halliburton, or they're taking them to Boeing, or they're taking them here, where they can be of best use. They don't need to put them in the military first. They're recruiting. Believe me, they're recruiting.
But you're missing my point. So no, but again, they're padding pockets. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about for the greater good of this nation to have qualified people, you know, at the helm of what is supposed to be the greatest superpower military on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Like, so yes, Halliburton's cool, but is that Dick Cheney? Like,
it's all of them.
Like, I
it's
mean,
all of them, Kimmy.
You know, I get it.
All the money.
But knowing about it and laughing about it is the shit that frustrates me, because, like, Len, you're privileged enough to know that information. There's millions of people in this country that have they've never even heard Halliburton, right? Like, Boeing, the only thing they know about Boeing is if they by chance been on a plane and maybe read the thing in the seat pocket in front of them. Like, that looks a little familiar to me. Like, I was on a 737. They don't know the history of Boeing or McDonnell Douglas. They don't know Raytheon. Like, I mean, we are the biggest purveyors of defense. I mean, but Len, that's why you created this podcast.
Yes, I know.
So, I mean, while we sit here and we laugh about it, and I realize, Harle, you did not come here just to talk about the military. That is definitely a point of contention for me, where I think a lot of people, because many people who feel the way I feel socially on a lot of issues, would love to see our military just dissolved completely. Like, why do we need it? I don't believe in war. And I believe that we need to be defenders of democracy. Like, I do believe that. Like, I believe that they look to America as a beacon. Like we're the only ones doing it to some degree, right? And we are floundering right now. And if we flounder, it is all going to hell in a handbasket. Like, you've already seen what's happened when we started having the level of social discord that we had in this nation, and you started to see our military putting hands on mothers, in different communities during protests. Like, then all of a sudden you see Venezuela and Colombia, and I'm not saying some of these places were ever peaceful, but literally when we fall apart, the rest of the world is like, well, fuck it. And that's very scary.
But a lot of those countries thrived at some point. A lot of those countries.
I don't want to be a country that thrived at some point, okay?
No, I mean, Venezuela at one point was a thriving country. It was safe. It was a ongoing thing. And you have, the fact that certain people get in power and that shuts it down. And the sad thing is, we're voting in people in this country that are changing things by the stroke of a pen that we don't have any choice. They lie to you to get in office, and then they do whatever they want.
Well, and it's also people yelling and screaming from the rooftops that, again, it's like you wave a flag and a large sector of the country automatically just assumes that you're pro-military and you believe in our vets and you want to take care of everybody, and and it's like, If that's all it takes, are you kidding me?
That's all it takes.
That's wild, though. Like, put your money where your mouth is. And we saw this recently, like literally with a major bill that passed by the skin of its
They
teeth.
don't have
There
to.
were a lot of folks that scream about supporting our military that were not going to sign this shit and didn't sign this shit into legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, but where's the energy? Like, where's the energy for people calling them, like I said, like to the table? Like, wait a minute. You're full of shit. Like, you, my friend, are actually full of shit.
They're the crazy people. Remember, we talked about the crazy people. The crazy people are the ones that are screaming, hey, he lied. And then you got the 5,000 supporters on this side going, nah, he didn't lie.
They're putting on a
It's more
jersey.
difficult.
Yeah, they decide what team they're a part of, and then they're going to support that team vehemently, even if they are wrong. It's a cognitive bias that we build in our brain. This is actually like a psychological phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to see play out. It's horrifying. It's fascinating to see play out.
I love these smart women that can, like,
It's,
horrifying, yes.
It's horrifying.
It's
Absolutely
so
horrifying.
fascinating.
But it's people do not like it. Basically, people do not like to admit when they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they say, "I'm gonna," what's a name that I can do that's not tied to anyone? I'm gonna vote for Billy Bob, and I'm a full supporter of Billy Bob. But then Billy Bob does this or that. Oh, Billy Bob didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
No, we can hold people accountable.
Facts.
People are dynamic. People can be amazing in one sphere and
Yes.
absolutely terrible in another. And humans are such funny little creatures. We don't like to admit that because we don't like to say that we're wrong. Because by saying that, oh, my team member did something wrong, then that must mean I'm wrong. And I don't like being wrong because that physically hurts us in our mind. It has the same physical effect as like being beaten,
Pain?
essentially.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would fact check that, but there, yeah,
So it's kind of like the
it's-
dopamine effect that a TikTok gives you.
It's
or whatever.
physically
Like, that's the same thing.
uncomfortable to be wrong and to admit that you're wrong, so people just stand their ground even further, and that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, I voted for my senator, and my senator is amazing, and I love them so much. They can't do any wrong, and so when they do go wrong, they didn't actually do any wrong. And you
Where
see
you
that-
actually check their voting record.
Yeah, and
Wait
we
a
see that
minute.
so often of like,
Yeah.
I'm Republican or I'm Democrat, and that means that everything that my party does, that means that they can't do any wrong. And you see that so often. People just need to
this
take
is a lot of
accountability.
years of training, though. This is not.
Yeah.
This is not something that happened overnight. It's a lot of. You remember? I don't know what election was it where he's flip flopping. He's flip flopping on his.
It's every election.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
started 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So if you repeat something enough, it becomes fact to people,
Yeah.
especially to the younger generation who didn't hear anything prior to that.
Well, or if you just
It's
take out a social media ad, fraudulent or not,
Yes.
deal with the defamation lawsuit later. You can say whatever you want, and the damage has been done
yes,
once it's hit somebody's timeline.
yes,
Yeah, and you talk about, this is a middle ground podcast, and I would say majority of America's middle ground, that's how a bell curve statistic works. And we throw back to Joanna.
Yeah.
But we don't like voting for politicians that are middle ground.
ground.
We have this term.
We want them to.
Yeah, we have this term rhino, Republican in name only. Oh, so what? So if they are, Republican in all these issues, but they're, maybe they're a little bit softer, a little bit more middle ground in those issues, suddenly we can't vote for them. Even if they would represent the American population in a better way, in a more fair way, suddenly they're gone.
Yep. Like the Republican that has all the financial, but is maybe pro-choice.
Yes.
Right? Absolutely not. You're not a Republican. Or the Democrat who is not for raising tax. You know what I mean? Like doesn't necessarily believe in all the social welfare
Trickle
programs
down.
and things
Then
like that.
suddenly they're fake. They're
You're not for the people.
You're not for the people. You're not going to represent this party well. But and that's part of this two-party system, right? It's so
it's
profitable to have these two-party systems. It's so inflammatory because it's so easy to point the fingers and make money. Back to the money. Where's the money coming from?
It's all about the money.
It's all about the money.
But your background, obviously, again, we said social work. You work for a nonprofit. Now, the nonprofit is basically dealing with is it food insecurity?
Childhood food insecurity, yes. So it's a nonprofit based out of Michigan. We serve several thousand healthy, ready-to-eat meals a day that get kids take home. So these are meals that kids might not get dinner otherwise. And so majority of the students that we serve receive a free or reduced lunch from the school. And then we provide an evening time meal. So these are meals that they're taking home with them. Every meal has a fruit, a vegetable, a protein, a healthy snack. It's a well-rounded meal. And it we've seen amazing benefits.
Yeah.
Children should not worry about if they are going to have dinner or if they're going to have breakfast. They're kiddos. Their job is to be kids, to play, to learn, and to interact with the world in the most beautiful and innocent way, and not worry about food.
I think the pandemic, at least in Florida, really highlighted the amount of people that not only live paycheck to paycheck, but are dealing with food insecurity. It was wild to see some of the lines down here, like the food bank lines. And I work with an organization called Flippany, and they do the same thing, and it's incredible. But they served 3.5 million meals. Fantastic. I want to say during the course of a few months. The state called them directly once they shut down the schools, because that is something that many people, especially people who don't worry about this, have no concept of the degree to which this nation really is food insecure, especially like when you see the amount of waste, right? The amount of food that gets thrown out, even in my own house, it's disgusting. And then to think that there are children who don't know where their next meal is coming from, or when they go home on a weekend,
in the richest country in the world,
get something. Like what is it in Michigan? Like, because I know some of the numbers, in South Florida.
In Michigan, so the nonprofit that I work for serves 4 counties, and in their some of those counties are pretty rural. It's not an urban area that we're in. We have almost 30,000 kids that are food insecure. In those 4 counties. I think like Michigan-wide, there's like is millions. It's in the millions of people and families that are experiencing food insecurity. But I do think it's worth noting how we define food insecurity, because some people think food insecurity is just, I don't have any food at all, I don't have access to any food. But we define food insecurity of lack of access to the right kinds of food.
Okay.
So because there's cheap filler, there's food deserts. You might have access to food, but what kind of food is that?
A box of cereal a day is not a meal.
Well, no, I mean, literally the difference, you guys, Joanna and Harle came down from Michigan, so they haven't had a whole lot of time, or they didn't have a whole lot of time in South Florida. But, Len, you can attest to this. For much of this corridor, it's defined by east of 95 and west of 95.
Yeah.
And east of 95, if you drive up Biscayne Boulevard, you're going to find a Fresh Market, a Whole Foods, a Publix, pretty much every few massive avenues, right? You go west of 95, and it's bodegas and fast food joints and liquor stores and maybe a Sedano's or a Presidente, but nowhere near the bounty with which we have on the other side of the highway. And it's something that, again, people are not traveling outside of their comfort zone. So for a massive portion of folks who live east of 95 or know that that's where their grocery stores are, they have no idea that literally in South Florida, where like the number one source of economic income is agriculture, and fruits and veggies in particular, we have entire communities that don't have access to fresh vegetables.
Yeah, no, there's kids that we serve that have never had like a blueberry or never had a raspberry. It's quite ridiculous when you think about it, because in Michigan we're a pretty big agricultural powerhouse as well. I'm from an area that's called like the salad bowl, because that's how much fruits and vegetables that we grow, because we have such amazing soil and access to water. But there's kids right up the street that have never had what I would consider an everyday fruit or vegetable. We have kids that part of our programming is having farms, and we bring kids onto these farms and they get to see where their food comes from. We have kids that don't know where their food comes from. They pull a carrot out of the ground, and they are shocked that there's dirt on their carrot. So there's a big problem when it comes to food and kids and families in our country.
Yeah, well, I remember growing up, you had the wheel, and this was your daily, what you should have daily. They taught it to us in school, the primary food groups, what you should have a portion of. That's not in school anymore.
Is it really not in school anymore? Do they not have the pyramid? And remember the little Eggman with the skinny legs that used to do the little dance?
There's been a couple. There's been a couple renditions.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So there's like the pyramid,
now it's McDonald's,
and then there's like
Wendy's,
the My
Burger
Plate. And then I think for a while it was like, whatever the thing that like Coke did partnership with like Michelle Obama of like go outside and play, and there's been a lot of renditions of that, but it's not as robust as it should be. Kids are getting impressions about their food from a very, very young age. Kids' bodies and brains, if they're not getting the proper nutrition that they need by the age of 12, they're having irreparable damage to themselves. And so it's both on the education side of preparing kids for success in their later life of you need fruits and vegetables to live and be the healthiest version of yourself, but also providing it to them. I don't know if you guys remember being 12 and under, you're kind of useless.
Yeah.
In a very endearing way.
Yeah. You're not doing the grocery shopping.
You're not doing the
in
grocery
most
shopping.
cases.
You're not making.
Lenny, you might have been, because I know you were a whole man.
You don't have
by
the
13.
power
You were
to.
good.
But it's this uneducation. This is when you have parents who don't necessarily know what the best thing is for them, they're gonna have kids who don't know what the best thing is for them. It's just it's a cycle, and it's a cycle that's going to be very difficult to break.
Notice that
But
it's a cycle that's
on.
I was going to say, but it's also a cycle that is unequivocally impacting a certain population.
It's socio-economic.
Yes, facts. Facts.
It's
poor, white, brown, black, like the poor.
Yeah.
And that also goes to, like, when we say lack of education, that's not necessarily by choice. You know what I mean? That's, again, we have a public education system that is supposed to provide equal knowledge to everyone, but doesn't, right? And then when you're talking about not knowing, if you grow up in a food desert, well, guess what? You're most likely going to have children who grew up in a food desert, and oftentimes we don't know what to aspire to if we never see it. So the same way there are kids in Michigan who've never had blueberries, we have kids in Overtown who've never been to the beach.
Yep.
Or kids who live in West Hollywood that have never been to the beach. And it's the same kind of degree. You don't know what you're missing out on if you don't know, right? And that's a frustrating thing. But when we're talking about health, like you also mentioned when we talked about the military, obesity. You mentioned high fructose corn syrup, and you made the equation of oil to, things
every
of necessity.
product. That cup you have in your hand.
Yes. And high fructose corn, no. Actually, this is plant-based.
That's oil.
My tequila is
No, the
not,
cup
though.
is made of
yes,
oil.
Yes, the cup is made of oil, but my tequila is agave.
Yes.
So sugar.
Yeah, but not high fructose corn syrup. Hopefully. Don Julio, we're going to have a problem. But no, that's the other issue, is that oftentimes from an economic standpoint, buying the food that is good for you is too expensive.
It's unattainable. Like, my husband and I, we both work. We're both college educated. We have means, and it's still hard to buy the right food, to have access to the right food, and to afford the right food. And I can't imagine for families with kids, single parents. I grew up with a single parent, and I remember the portions we had to live on. I don't know how families are doing, and some families are not doing it, and that's, the resources aren't there for them.
How has Michigan recovered from the devastation of the auto industry leaving there? Because I remember, it's 25 years now almost. 20 years since.
There's still a ton of industry in Michigan. A ton.
But I mean, has the economy, and because I know, it was displaced. You see the Michael Moore documentary on Flint and all this stuff, and I know it was have those people,
Have the working class
people got back into?
It depends on the area. So I live in Western Michigan. Western Michigan is very, very wealthy. There are a lot of well-to-do families that I'm sure if you looked up the names, you'd recognize them on the national scale. Detroit area, they are just now kind of swinging back. Yeah. There are still areas of Detroit I would never, ever step my foot in for my safety, and a lot of people would agree with that. Detroit is a slow burn of getting back on its feet, because the auto industry leaving did devastate the working class family in the area.
Well, I mean, and we saw that also in Cleveland. We saw it in Cincinnati. Is that the Rust Belt? Or is that more Pennsylvania, West Virginia?
I don't know. I've never heard the term the Rust Belt.
No, I'm familiar with the term Rust Belt. It's like all these industries that leave, and now there's these ghost towns where there's.
But I feel like it was more like it was definitely like
that
Pennsylvania,
was like Pittsburgh.
Well, Pennsylvania, and then West Virginia, Tennessee, like that. But then you have that same kind of similar situation happening in the Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit's, like certain areas in the Midwest that were very much, part of building this country industry, textile manufacturing. And then obviously when the cost of labor just got too expensive, we started outsourcing and they lost their jobs. And now a lot of that opportunity that's coming back is foreign investment.
Yeah.
And that's
it's cheaper for them to build cars here than it is to ship them.
But it's also...
And pay the tax.
But it's also
that's
scary.
why they build it here.
We were talking about that, 75-mile city that you and Joanna were discussing, while we weren't shooting. And some Saudi prince or whatever has laid down... What the other scary thing is that Americans no longer own America. That's the other issue. So when you're talking about Detroit, which was the heart and soul for many reasons, music, industry, automotive, all of these things, to now, just be coming
it's a
back.
couple steps above West Virginia where it was when the industry pulled out.
But it's not even American investment. You know what I mean? So it can be taken away, or it can be levied, or it can be, we've seen it, they've done it. I forget where it was, but there was a glass manufacturer that came in, and it was an Asian glass manufacturer. And within a year and a half, all of the upper management that had been American had been replaced with, people from their team. And they talked cash shit about the American workforce because in their country, they can work people 16, 17 hours a day. They live in on-campus housing. They're away from their families, but maybe 1 or 2 days out of the month. You know what I mean? They have zero margin for error. It wasn't Chinese either. I think I don't know what it was. I don't think it was Chinese though. Yeah, are all the countries? They're all the countries over there.
All those countries are.
They are not all socialist, Len. See, this is part of the problem. Letting
it's
the audience
but
say
they're not. It's not that. It's the. Who was I? We were talking earlier about the industries. It's their culture. That's what they're brought up doing. They're brought up working. They're brought up. They make $1 over there a day, and they're happy to get it for the 12 hours.
Joanna mentioned it. They're probably a statistical dream situation because they're efficient, they're effective, and they make the cost of producing whatever it is that they're producing, not negligible, but, it makes the profit margin larger, right? And maybe we're not quite as adept. Like they were saying, we have fat fingers because it goes back to the obesity situation. They had, again, it was another epic documentary, but it makes me sad because as much as we're talking about things returning to Detroit, is it benefiting Americans? I don't know, right? It looks good on paper. Hey, there's industry here. Hey, we're making things here. But who's making it?
Yeah, a lot of the foreign manufacturers are not necessarily going to Detroit. They're in Tennessee and
but regardless, how many are they hiring Americans?
Yeah, they're hiring Americans.
And are they keeping them employed? Because this is what I'm telling you.
The
is
Toyota
that
plant,
they do it to make it look good in the beginning.
BMW.
And then they slowly but surely push out the American people and bring in their own.
They can, it's one of the smartest things that China did or does is if you have an American company there, someone in China has to own 50% of the company. There has to be a Chinese company that owns 50%.
Do we do that here? I don't think so.
We do not do that.
So then, yes,
we should.
Great.
But these are things. But again, this goes to her point before about people pointing the finger. Oh, that's socialism. That's this. That's that. It's the economy. If we want to keep our country strong, we need to do some of these things. We need to.
We do, but we can't just give it over carte blanche to private, because.
But we've done that. We've given it away already.
New York.
We've given it away. It's it needs to be start taking it back. Start making them invest in us. Make them invest. You want to put a factory in this town? Great. I appreciate all the jobs, everything else. Build 500 homes and a new school and pay for the teachers. Mm-hmm. You don't. Fair wage is fine. We don't have to own half your company, but you have to do that if you want to be here. And it's, those kind of things. The simplest solutions could change a lot in this country, and nobody's willing to look at the simple solutions because they're too fucking upset about this or that or this or that, which is really bullshit, which is
It's profitable to keep us distracted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Divide and conquer.
Literally,
divide and conquer.
Out of Lenny's mouth. That's incredible how that works. No, I clearly I don't again, disagree, but I also think that there are just a lot of people that are completely unaware. Like, again, we have these small numbers of people that are, Len, you say it all the time, making a lot of noise. And then you've got a lot of people in the middle that are just toiling away. Either it's making ends meet or living their best life, whatever they're doing, and thinking, it's not really impacting me yet, so I don't really give a
because how can a family or how can any individual focus on these larger issues and really put their energy towards that if they are living paycheck to paycheck, if they cannot put food on the table, if every day they're at risk of homelessness, they have this pressure of poverty over top of them of, if I miss a paycheck, I am on the streets. We can't unite because so many of the American population, the families that make America what it is, have this thumb down on them of food insecurity, not access to the proper food nutrition, not an ability to pay their housing needs because of, well, litany of things, industry not being where it is, corporations not being held accountable, low wages, not keeping up with inflation. There's a litany of things. Again, systemic. There's so many things that pour into it. You could talk about that all day.
I love that you said that, though. You said corporations not being held accountable. Are you talking about financially? Because, again, this is a place where Len and I disagree. Like, I really do believe that big business should pay fucking taxes. I'm a firm
big
believer in
business
that.
should absolutely pay. If I have to pay taxes, they need to pay taxes.
But Lenny feels like the infrastructure that they provide, the jobs that they provide, some of these things negate the taxes because they're contributing in another way. And I'm like, yeah, but they're still clearing.
But what kind of jobs are they providing? So if we take, the two biggest employers in the United States is Walmart and McDonald's, I believe. And Amazon. What kind of jobs are they providing? Because they're not providing a living wage. We say that these jobs are necessary. I want to go to Walmart. I want to be able to shop. I want to be able to go through the McDonald's drive-thru. I want 2-day shipping from Amazon. So the people that make that happen should be paid a living wage because us as a society have deemed that those jobs are necessary for society. But those corporations are not being held accountable to pay those people a living wage. So now they are the ones that are living paycheck to paycheck. They are the Americans that are making America what it is, that are not seeing the fruits of that labor. And corporate greed is massive. Greed is one of the most destructive.
Yes, but taxes aren't going to fix it because taxes are not going to put the money in the hands of the people.
Okay, either tax them or make them pay their fair way. Because right now what's happening is...
They're eating on both ends.
Yeah, they're eating on both ends. They're not paying people enough. And then those individuals have to turn to, Medicaid, food stamps, and those other programs.
So we're paying for it.
We are paying for corporations to fuck us, essentially.
Yes. And I believe in that somewhat. And the only issue I have with it is what's a fair living wage? Where are you?
MIT did a study.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Did they?
Did they come
MIT did this big study, and they broke it down by county, by state.
Shut up.
Yeah.
I love my people
I have
in
to
Boston.
look that up.
Look it up. They
Probably
did a fantastic job.
some statistical engineer.
Some statistical engineer.
Some engineer did that
Billy
study,
Duggan.
let me tell you. No, but that is something that I don't think the greater American population wants to even address, Len, and I'm going to tell you why. Because we like to judge ourselves and others in our place in the hierarchy, right? We like to feel like we're doing better. And if somebody comes in and says that $70,000 a year job that you have, that you pride yourself on, that you hang your hat on, is now just above poverty, you're going to feel a way about that, right? Because you've prided yourself on being middle class, possibly even upper. Who the fuck knows what you were saying? But I think that that's a big part of the problem. People don't want to reevaluate the situation because it's going to have to make them reevaluate their place in that hierarchy. And, we as a country take a lot of pride on looking down at somebody else, right? Like feeling like we're a little bit better off than the guy next door, whether that's, based on a car that we drive, with a credit card that we can barely make a minimum payment on, right? Or whatever it is. And I think that that's one of the things keeping us from really addressing it because if we did, we'd realize that like even the $20 an hour, right? Which to some people, like we had that conversation. If I take myself back to high school or college, like that's a great wage, right? Like there are people that worked in textile factories and things like that. They fought for that $20 an hour job, but $20 an hour now,
I feel you.
You're not living in a...
I feel you, but in certain areas, you might be able to survive on that.
So maybe it's not a federal minimum wage. It could be broken down by state or even by county.
Yeah, it's something. I mean, if you live in the middle of Kansas, rent is not $3,000 for a 1-bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
But
not. So, if here, minimum wage needs to be $30 for you afford to live.
But I was going to say, but guess what? We need the people that can only afford them. Like, and you know this. So it's, to me, again, we go back to that socialism thing, but it's practicality. There are things that we deem necessary as a society, right? But then the individuals that provide that service to us are always the ones at the bottom of the barrel that we are so quick to turn our back on. Like,
that's why I tip so well.
Well, like in Miami, but you have to.
You have to.
Because otherwise, it's going to get to a point where the people who work in the service industry in Miami are going to have to live in freaking Tallahassee and take the Bright Line every day to work 4 hours. And
the service industry, I don't know. You mean like bartenders and waiters?
No, I'm talking about the housekeepers
Oh, yeah.
and, the guys that work the back staff and the bussers and the people who make that incredible, Cuban sandwich we had earlier, that work on a cook line, some of which are probably illegal, but are busting their asses and taking care of a family and doing a job that possibly somebody else wouldn't do for $7 an hour.
And I can tell you, so I ran a cleaning business for 5-ish years. That's back-breaking work. It sucked. Mm-hmm. And now I have a amazing office job, and I make much more. Mm-hmm. I'm telling
you. But if you compared the amount of labor.
The amount of labor. If someone told me, hey, I'll pay you $10,000 more to go back to cleaning full-time, I would not do it. But I believe anyone that is cleaning or deserves way more than what I'm doing in a cushy office. I have a fantastic job. My stress is way lower than when I was a cleaner. And so this perspective that because you do a job that I have deemed as less than, it's not as skilled as what I have. Oh God, that is nasty. That is what we've lowered people to. Mm-hmm. If a job is necessary and we deem necessary as something that we want in society, people should absolutely be able to make a living on it.
Well, and I feel or there should be we live in a state, and I don't know what it is in Michigan, but in Florida, they made it so you cannot have rent control. That's literally written into whether it's the Constitution or there's a bill or an amendment or something where rent control is basically illegal, right? But it's honestly the only reason why a massive portion of the folks who live in Manhattan can even live in Manhattan, right? The folks who again are the bussers and the servers or the bus drivers or things of that nature, right? Is because they have rent control. They could never pay, what the Wall Street broker pays for his Tribeca ever. My God, Jesus, it'd be crazy. But it's getting to be that way, in places here in Florida, and we are nowhere near catching up. And yet we are still so heavily dependent on the service industry. We're still predominantly a tourism industry, and we're getting into crypto and tech and other things, but it's nowhere near at the top of, the list as far as employment goes, and even banking and finance, right? If you're not working in the Central or South American markets or the Caribbean markets, you don't have a job here, working in banking and finance. So it's just crazy to me that people can't wrap their minds. We need legitimate, affordable housing, and clearly people aren't going to do that on their own. Landlords, for the most part, we're greedy. We're greedy people. Like you said, if it's not making money, it's not doing anybody any good. But if you continue to be that short-sighted, we're going to end up in a much, 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 much worse predicament. I know I want to walk into a restaurant and have somebody there that's happy to wait on me.
Absolutely.
And right now, you can barely find, employees. And part of that is because that job doesn't afford that.
It doesn't pay enough for me to want to do that.
Or even to be able to live. I can't live
here
here and do it. I might love waiting tables, but if I'm working at a rando Chili's, that ain't the place that's paying the rent. Now, some of the places, you go or that I go, they're clearing 6 figures tending bar. So, anybody who turns their nose up or down at, people working in service are absolutely insane. But you earn your money. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely. It's work. I don't know.
But I mean, you've owned properties. Would you be willing to do, do you think that, mandated affordable housing for people in the service sector would be something smart? Is that the thing that you would have big business?
It doesn't
put the
really.
bill for?
It there was a project going on in Hallandale where they participated in providing land, part of the land to this development so that they would build affordable housing over here. And is it So affordable housing's
I'm not
a
talking
weird.
about
Affordable housing is a
projects.
weird thing, okay? Because you can have a nice apartment, and if you make it eligible for HUD, then it becomes affordable housing, but it's still subsidized by the government.
Mm-hmm.
So they required them in certain buildings to make 5 apartments, HUD qualified. They didn't require them to have 5 HUD people living there. They required them to have 5 apartments that were qualified for HUD.
Mm-hmm.
So, it goes back to a total scam. And I mean, I have a friend who owns 5 houses, and he's not raising his rent on people.
Mm-hmm.
There's people living in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in Hollywood for $1,800 a month, and he's raised it. He's starting to raise it, but like $100 a year.
Yeah.
He could get $3,000 for it.
But I just wish there were more business people. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a government subsidy. Like there was a guy, Fireman Derek. He owns do you know Fireman Derek's? It's a massive big show. It's incredible, by the way. If you guys were going to Miami, Harley, I would say go to Fireman Derek's. But he was discussing it, and he said he opened in Wynwood, and he had wanted to buy a section of property to build housing for his staff and for other people who worked in the Wynwood community, because it's a community that's being gentrified, and these folks that are from there that work there are being forced out at an exponential rate. It's wild. And he couldn't convince other business owners to like go in on the property with him. And he's like, I don't understand. Like, you're gonna lose your employees. Like, these people live in the neighborhood. Like, they're going to Homestead, they're gonna get a job at a bakery or at a smoke shop or whatever it is. Like, this is in your best interest to come in on this with me and do this so that we can keep the staff that we value so much, that has provided this incredible product that has made you wealthy. And people just can't.
Short-sighted greed. Back to the greed.
Like,
You follow the money. And it's so hard to see because, again, these are the people that are making America what it is. And we can't provide them with the basic dignity of housing. And even beyond rent, American Dream is supposed to be buying this house, but that's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll reiterate, my husband and I are very comfortable. But for us to buy a house, it's going to be years and years and years to even save up for a down payment for the 3% because of the situation we're in. And even then, I don't know if I want to lock myself into a mortgage and be house poor, because if something were to happen, we're completely boned. And I consider me and my husband lucky. There's so many families and individuals that are so much worse off than we are, and they're struggling. And we can't afford them the basic dignity of housing. What the hell are we doing in this country if we can't have that basic level of compassion? Maslow hierarchy needs: housing, food, safety, and we can't provide those. This gets me fired up if you can't tell.
But would you consider that socialism? Do you consider yourself a socialist?
I would say there's certain sectors I think socialism could benefit, but I don't consider myself a full socialist, no.
Yeah. And it's funny that people don't understand that there's degrees
Yeah.
to that, right? Like, it's funny because Medicare and Medicaid, socialism, guys. Like,
That's the level of
if you're
socialism.
literally
Absolutely.
getting a check, or if you're on disability or whatever, and it just makes me laugh when there are folks who are participating and are reaping. Did you cash those stimulus checks, guys?
That's
Socialism. Or did you donate it back? No, you didn't. Are you taking the child's, the tax credit? Socialism. Like, at its fundamental basis, right? Like, there's things, but, anytime you talk about helping, what?
Extremes.
Middle ground.
There's no middle ground. It's, because somebody's screaming, oh, healthcare is going to be
ignorance, though, because there are Len, there are people screaming about that are literally benefiting from it.
Yes.
And that's the frustrating part about it. We can talk about the middle all we want, but if we're walking in a world of ignorance where the same people that are so anti-something are actually benefiting from it and don't even realize it.
Let me tell you an amazing story about that. So my mom is very, very anti-socialist. She hates on other single moms that get the assistance. But we were on food stamps. We were on Medicaid. There were times where she wasn't, working the crazy like four jobs, and because she had to meet the needs of childcare and taking care of her kids. So she looked at the balance of like, okay, well, I could work less hours, and it actually puts me farther ahead because I can take care of my kids
and not pay for child.
Right, but then she has been so programmed that socialism is evil, evil, bad, even though it allowed her to raise her family. A certain degree of it, right? And so there are so many people out there, like you were saying, that benefit from these systems, but then continue to hate on it and hate on the people that are choosing to engage in those systems for the best interest of themselves and their families.
That's wild. And look at how incredible you turned out. So, like I said, when we talk about manning the fuck up on this podcast, I know you had mentioned it earlier in talking about how you grew up in, a degree of poverty. Right? I mean, safe to say, and that you were a recipient of Medicaid and you had an incredible experience. Like, what was the turning point for you? Like, how did you realize, like, okay, this is not the cycle that I want to stay in? Because that's a big thing for Lenny. Lenny is a firm believer that, where you start does not dictate where or how you are finished. And that goes both ways, because you can start out with all the privilege and all the money in the world and you can fuck it all off, and you can start out with nothing and turn it into absolutely everything.
Yeah, and so you can easily accept the position that you have in life because you don't know anything different. I was blessed to be able to engage with different families in my community that were in a very different socioeconomic position. And so I craved more. I saw that what I had growing up in the trailer park is not the same as the beautiful McMansion that my friends were growing up in, and I wanted more. I made this promise to myself that I would never turn out like my parents did. And my vision for that, with my very childlike plan, was go to college, get a degree, and that will save me. And so I did everything I could to get that degree. At 18, I started a business with cleaning, and I got myself through college, and it actually worked for me. It's not going to work for everyone. I'm not going to say college is perfect for everyone. Absolutely not. Go into trade, go into whatever was going to work and make the most sense for you. But it was a conscious decision to want better for myself. I saw this cycle. My mom's new husband, his niece, she was graduating at high school when I was about a freshman in college, sophomore in college, and her family was heavily pressuring her, just get a job at the plant down the road. The plant that her parents have both spent 30 years at, because that's all they know. And I saw this cycle repeating because she didn't have access to those different areas of life. She was in even more poor areas. She had less access to things, and so that's all she saw, and that's all that she aimed for. And so because I had the experiences that I had and being around the people that I did at a certain age, I was able to aim a little bit higher.
How did you get those experiences, though? What gave you the access to clearly people who had a little bit more? Yeah,
it was friendships. And actually studies show this, that kids that have access to friendships that are at a higher socioeconomic level than they are, that they have a greater likelihood of success. And so I'm like one of those statistics that got in with the rich kids, as my brother says. Well, you hung out with the rich kids. But it let me see another side of life. That life didn't have to be like what it was growing up. And I could make that decision for myself once I got to an age that I was able to have the autonomy and make those decisions.
Well, and then you knew there was more.
There's more
to aspire to.
Absolutely.
I'm going to ask you another question.
Please.
And Len, I hope it doesn't make your skin crawl. What? If you had been Black, do you think that this would have turned out the same way, or brown?
Yeah, no, I think about this all the time. So, I started the cleaning business. That is like one of the biggest thing that saved me is making my own money and owning my own labor. That let me set my schedule, let me set my pay as I made my way through college. That was the biggest thing that saved me. But if I was brown, if I was Hispanic, there's a lot of Hispanic people where I grew up. I don't think that all the white wealthy people that hired me would have paid me what I was asking or even let me into their house. Because of it, I heard them say some pretty nasty things. And so I know for a fact that a good handful of my clients would have not have let me into their house to clean. Or I would have been paid drastically less. So yeah, part of it is my race, and that was a little bit of a leg up that I got.
I love the fact that you're even willing to acknowledge that, though, or that you're in a space where you can see that there is, some difference. And I say that just because we have many difficult conversations on the ManTFup podcast, and, self-awareness and awareness of privilege, whether that's, being male, being white, having money.
Olive, I'm Olive.
Yes. Well, being Olive, has worked well for you, Len. Plays a big role sometimes in how, I'm not saying in where you're going to end up, because we've seen many people from all walks of life turn it around and become ridiculously successful.
Yeah, it could be easier. I can see that. It could be easier. But because it's harder doesn't mean the opportunity is not there.
No, and that's but
even knowing that opportunity is there is a big thing. So the trailer park that I grew up in, I still keep in touch with a couple of the people that I know. They didn't even know that there was other things out there for them, and they didn't even know how to get it. So for me to go to college was huge. I spent hours educating. I'm a first-generation college student. There was no one to help me, absolutely no one, and it took a lot of grit and some amazing people in my life to let me see that one was an option, and two, how to make that happen. And so for other people that were dealt different cards, while yes, that opportunity is there for them, and they could have done the same thing and go to college and do what I did, they can't do that if they don't know if that's a possibility or don't know how to do that, because that education and that support just is not there.
Yeah. It's very hard to visualize. We talk about visualization, a lot, and it's very hard to visualize, yourself as a CEO, as a CFO, or even just as quasi-successful, owning a home, if you don't know anybody that does that. Even with healthy relationships, it's hard to envision what that looks like if all you ever know is toxicity, if all you ever know is negativity, or if all you ever know is a single-parent household. Like, how do you learn how to be in a, healthy, encouraging relationship if you're only ever with one parent who's giving, and that, to me, I always say, that's probably why I'm so good being single, is that I was raised by very strong women, from my grandmother to my mother to my aunt.
Or why you are single.
That, too. I love how you just literally took me praising the women in my life and made it a negative, bro. You're on a roll today.
Oh, back up. Being single is not a negative, though.
No.
Or why you're single. But
Yeah.
from a man's perspective, I take that as do you think that's a dig, by the way?
No, as I'm getting up in the years, I know a lot of women, and my mom was single till, I just had lived with my mom. But there's certain things that, women who are older and single typically have a reason why. It's like they're comfortable.
Fault?
No, it's you're comfortable with it. It's you don't need that partner.
Good. That was a nice save.
It's
Len. That was a really good cheers.
It's
to
just
you. That was a good
it's
save.
just that's the way it is.
And when you're with, never mind. I'm not gonna set you up anymore. I was gonna get you to literally stick your foot in your mouth, but
Why not?
I'm not gonna do it to you. Because, like I said, I work with another version of you to some degree.
Yeah, I know.
And,
He says the same things.
he does. But he'll also throw in there, you're getting up there. It's time. Figure this shit out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
Well, women that are single and stay single for long periods of life are actually statistically more happier and make more money. So get that bag, girl.
Yes. No. Not worried about it. But, to my point, though, I wasn't raised needing, again, it's just one of those things that I think it programs you differently.
So can I ask you a question? So you were raised by your mom,
yeah,
right? Did your mom have a lot of relationships, boyfriends?
No.
Okay. So my mom did.
Gotcha.
This is not a dig on my mom. My mom is an amazing human being. She had a lot of boyfriends.
Yeah.
And so my grandma would always joke, it's a 6-month time stamp. Let's see how long this is going to last. And it really. Yeah. And they're always the most interesting people. I could tell you some stories. And that set a very interesting tone for me as I started dating, because it got me into seeing that as the relationships of how they should function. It got me into relationships that I should have never been in. Before we went on air, I told you a little bit about an abusive relationship that I ended up in. But that almost mirrored exactly some of the relationships my mom was in. Yeah, and I accepted that as normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, no, it's ironic because I think that we've talked about this, but I have a lot of good friends, and especially I tend to have male friends, But I always tell them, especially when they have daughters, because they think treating their daughter like a princess, will make her value herself. And while, yes, that's great because you have a male role model, I tell them how you treat the women in your life is actually more important because she idolizes you, and however you treat women in your life is how she's going to allow herself to be treated because you're the man that she will hold all other men.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's monkey see, monkey do.
You know what I'm saying? So if you're running through women and giving them bags or taking them to dinner but running through them, she'll be okay with that cycle continuing so long as somebody's giving her things or taking her out, right? If you are respectful to her mother and respectful to the women in your life and you treat everyone with dignity and you're careful, you're not introducing to everyone. I'm not saying don't live your life, but you're living it where only the people that are important and that can be a part of that functioning family dynamic are there. That is a much healthier relationship to see. My mom was with my stepdad. He's a great man. They were not good together, but and not even in an abusive way. He was just, it was weird. But he was a good guy. And we had a nice life later on. She married him when I was 9. They were married for 8 years. But my mom is very much the person who, when she's done, she's done. She did that with my dad. She put up with a lot from my dad before I was born. Never spoke an ill word about him. The rest of my family told me all the dirt on my dad, right? Other people would snitch on him. My mother never said a bad word about him, but she knew when she was about to have me or a couple months after, it's a wrap. So she, left him, got divorced and whatever. And she did the same thing with my stepdad.
Your mom.
When she was over it, and she's not going to yell, she's not going to scream. So I'm very grateful that I didn't grow up in that. There was never screaming and door slamming and pack up your shit, we're leaving, and then coming back a week later. It wasn't that, but it was very much okay, I'm not happy in this. Peace out. And she put up with a lot. So I know that I've put up with a lot, that maybe I shouldn't necessarily have put up with. But when I'm done and I can move on. And I know that I'm going to be good by myself. But it's funny because my grandmother, who got divorced when nobody got divorced, right? When my mom told her she was going to leave my stepdad, my grandmother all of a sudden flipped the script. And I've told you, my grandmother was followed a guru to Hawaii, was on her visualization and on her, mind control type of deal. See it, speak it, believe it. But as she got older, she looked at my mother and was like, you can't work it out? And my mom was so blown by that. And my grandmother was kind of listen, at this point, and she was speaking at it now from an aging parent's perspective and not having a partner. And I think looking at it I don't want to be a burden on you guys. If you can make it work and have somebody that you can go through this thing called life with, make it. But it was so mind-blowing that this woman who was so far ahead of her time would at that point kind of flip the script, and we were all like, Graham, what is going on? And she ended up being very cool with the decision, and she was incredible. But it was kind of she asked my mother kind of hit pause, this is the first time she's ever basically told me, not suck it up, but try to figure it out. Don't be single at your age, basically, is what she was kind of saying. And my mom was like, I got this. And she did. And we're great. And now my mother actually lives with me. But, I think I walk away maybe sometimes from things because I've seen that I can be okay by myself. And I was raised by women who lived incredible lives and did it alone. So, to your point, what you see is oftentimes, whether it's relationships, whether it's education, whether it's opportunity or access, it's so important. And as parents, we have to do a better job, I think, of keeping that in mind, or even as mentors or just people who play a role in children's lives.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that my husband and I have decided to be child-free. Because I know in myself that I spent a lot of my childhood raising myself. I don't want to raise someone else. I want some time to be selfish. And that time is going to be in my adulthood life. And that some people see that as oh, that's a very selfish decision. To me, that is very compassionate, because I know that any kids that I do have, I have a lot of stuff I'm still working through, and I know that I would pass that down to that kid, and I refuse to do that because all the love that I would have for any potential child, I'm not doing that to them. And some people see that oh, you see yourself as so negative. No. That is just seeing myself for who I am and really taking myself accountable for who I am and knowing my behaviors. And my brother and I joke about this. I have an amazing little puppy dog. And he asked me, he's like, do you feel like you're doing some of the same things to the dog that mom did to us? And I was like, I kind of am, because I can get so wrapped up in my projects and my side things that I kind of forget that I have a dog. And then my mom did that. She was working hard. She was hustling. She was doing her thing. And sometimes she kind of forgot about us.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm doing that same thing. So I know that if I had kids, I would do that same thing. And I'm not perpetuating that cycle of trauma, that generational cycle. I'm not doing that.
That's an incredible level of self. How old are you? I'm sorry.
I'm 22.
Holy shit. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're a very impressive young woman.
Well, thank you.
And I don't mean that if that came across patronizing in any way. I didn't mean for it to. That's just, I would not have guessed 22. Like, when did you graduate college? Yesterday?
2021.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you've already kind of done your social work and now you moved on.
Yeah, I was only in housing, the veteran housing for like 2-3 months.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually pretty interesting. I was hired on, and I was so excited. That was my dream job. I always wanted to work with veterans as I was working through my BSW. And then I got hired on, and a couple weeks in, they're like, oh, yeah, we kind of need you to run this program. And the VA is letting us know that if you don't have X amount of veterans enlisted in this program, that we're pulling funding, and this program's going to be done by September. And I was hired in June. I was like, oh. And so I put in the work, but I was also applying for jobs just about immediately. And it was pretty fantastic. My last day there was the day that we got confirmation that program was going to continue on for another 3 years. But I kind of already had made my decision.
Got you.
I'm worth more than being lied to in an interviewing process. And so I left, and now I'm in a career of fundraising that I absolutely adore, and I'm getting a master's in it. So it all worked out.
Are they paying for your master's by any chance?
They are not at this point.
Okay.
No, but they are paying for a lot of like professional development stuff for me, just not specifically masters.
That's fantastic. Is child free a thing? Is this like a movement?
Oh yeah. Okay, there's like a whole like subreddit about it.
Did you know this?
Yeah. I'm learning.
To be fair, there's a subreddit about everything. So
yes, there is.
That doesn't say
But no,
anything.
but like it sounded very much the way that you said it. It was not a made up word or like that just you and your husband came up. I feel like this is do you feel like a lot of your peers are in this space? I feel like there are more young people right now that are very apprehensive about having children.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of reasons. I have mine. Nick has, my husband has other reasons behind why he wants to be child free, and some people it's environmental. They're doomsday about the environment, or some people it's they just don't want the financial burden. They understand of how much work goes into raising a child, and they're like, not for me. And I respect that. And I think a lot of my generation is as we're talking about this housing and not being able to afford stuff, they're seeing like, oh, that's probably not going to be able to work out for me. And it's even in the child-free community, there are people like, if the world was different, I would have kids.
Mm-hmm.
If I knew I could afford housing and I knew I could put food on the table, I would have kids.
Mm-hmm.
But we're put in such a difficult predicament as my generation, maybe that sounds a little bit whiny to you guys, where we're a little bit negative about our future because we don't have faith in it because of the systems that we grew up in.
You have nothing to say about that?
No, I think she's hitting it right on the head, and I understand it completely. I understand where she's coming from with all of that.
I'm just so excited to have somebody that is representative of so many of the things that we've, talked about, whether it was a tweet that we saw or, something on TikTok that was trending that we've had our conversations about, whether it's, interning for free or charging your children rent. Like the fact that she said, I'm worth more than being lied to, in the job interview. Like, she was like, peace. But at the same point, it wasn't like she said peace and just sat on her ass.
No.
Yeah, I'm like talking about you like you're not sitting
no, this
3
is
inches
great.
away from me. But no, we've had a lot of these discussions, and there's been a lot of, I remember when, and, things were different, and the wearing multiple hats, and, 40-hour week, what's that? And, like, I work in an industry where we don't punch a clock like that. It doesn't work that way in what I do. So it's funny because when you have these conversations just amongst, certain minded people, and then you finally have somebody that's living in it and walking through it, like, would you, like, charging your kids rent? We've had this conversation multiple times, but I feel like she's a good person to ask. Do you feel it's okay for parents to charge their kids rent if they come back home?
I think it depends on the circumstance. My mom, she told me, like, if you are in school, I'm not going to charge you rent. And that was a very fair bargain. But as soon as you're out of school, you're paying rent. But different families have different means. They have different relationships. There's about 8 billion different situations that people are in. And I think that really can only be decided by the family. I know this isn't like fair. If I moved in with my in-laws today, I would tell them, like, I'm paying rent. I'm not letting you not let me pay rent. But if my husband got sick, and because I had to take care of him, I lost my job, and I had to move in with someone, I'd be like, hey, please have a little bit of compassion to not charge me rent. And so I think it's completely situational. And same goes with, like, if my mom were to ever leave her current husband and she wanted to move in with me, because the appreciation that I have for her, I wouldn't charge her rent. I would say, hey, I'm going to give you a couple months, get back on your feet, and there'll be an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
My brother actually moved in with me after he got his bachelor's degree. He went to school in Wyoming, the state, and moved back to Michigan and moved in with me. And I said, I'll give you first month's free. I want you to be able to figure out a job. I knew that he had savings. I knew that he could pay that first month. But moving across the country, getting settled in, I'm like, listen, take your time. I want you to be successful. And if me as a little sister, that means I'm losing out on a month of rent, that's just me being compassionate and loving. So I think it's completely situational. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it did, but I just feel like your perspective is so even-keeled, and we don't see that often.
No.
Not on TikTok.
We see whining.
Not on Instagram. Or you see the exact, you see the, fuck that, pay rent. Or the whole, you had children, they didn't ask to be here, you owe, like, you know what I mean?
That's
like,
one of
the
my
kids don't
favorites.
owe you anything. And it's so wild to me, because I think that, again, when you have folks of a certain age, whether it's my age, whether it's Lenny's age, and all you see is that narrative, you have this kind of, misinformed perspective or perception of an entire generation. Like, I love the fact that she said child-free, but as far as traditional goes, right? She's fucking married at 22. That's as traditional as you get. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's we're not bucking all the systems, and that's the narrative that people would love to have you believe, right? These new kids, they're all queer. They can't figure out who they want to have sex with, whether it's boys.
I am
or
queer.
girls.
I am bisexual, though. That's really funny.
But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but like, they don't want to have babies. They don't want to get married. They like whatever. They're fucking it all up. And then, you have somebody sitting on the couch who is bisexual, married. No, she doesn't want to have kids, has all of her reasons lined up, has a great job, isn't complaining, is doing good things for society. Like, it's wild to me.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I like to see different perspectives from the younger generation than just what we're getting feedback on in social media, because those are clearly just
But I mean,
people with no time on their hands.
So
or too much time on their hands.
From your perspective, though, when we have the queer conversation, the narrative of it's being shoved down my throat, or now all of a sudden everybody's gay, or why is it everywhere? It's just a fad. Like, what do you say to that?
Yeah.
Because I know you've heard that. You've seen it.
Oh, yeah. When you have been repressed about something for so long, or that this topic has been repressed for generations, and now finally we're coming into a day and age where, a gay couple can walk down the street and not have to worry about being murdered, or as much, I should say. There's a sense of pride in that. Wow, I can be me. I can be unashamedly me. And I personally don't know if it's shoving it down your throat. My grandma always says that when she watches Grey's Anatomy. Oh, there's so much gay people on there. There's a transgender person. They're shoving it down our throat. Is it that, or is it now we're finally getting representation and you're just not used to seeing that?
I think it's partly the representation and the elimination, or the feeling that the representation of the previous generations is going away. It's the changing. It's not so much that, hey, there's two guys kissing in this movie. It's a lot of things are changing all at once. Being able to use words, being able to have freedom of speech and use things without getting in anybody's feelings. That is why people are saying it's being shoved down my throat. It's more than just, Brokeback Mountain. It's not,
May I ask what words are you referring to?
What words am I referring to?
Come on, Archie Bunker, let's go.
Well, there's a lot of
I know
them.
you've got
But how about just sitting Indian style? Or, which you don't even know what it is.
Crisscross applesauce. It's
Yeah,
Indian style, yeah.
but you're so young that it's not even a thing. But there's a lot of things. I mean, if you watched, I don't know if you've ever done any research on like old television shows like Archie Bunker or any of those that we were raised on, you know, we would use words talking to our friends that people might get their feelings hurt. It's not directed towards them. If you happen to be in a room and somebody says, that fucking faggot, you know, we're not saying it as a derogatory term towards someone who's gay. We're saying it about that kid over there who's one of our friends. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, you're calling somebody a pussy. It's normal.
Yeah, so I got some good news, bad news for you. Good news, we live in the United States. You can say whatever the hell you want, whenever the hell you want to. Bad news, you might face repercussions for that, and that goes for anything. So
yes, and listen, I'm all for that.
Why is there a pause?
If someone walks
why
up,
is there a pause that someone is asking for you to respect them? Why is that an issue for you?
It's not that if someone's asking me to respect them. It's that if I have to limit my conversation in the general public because one person might get their feelings hurt, it's and we talked about this earlier. It's this percentage is trying to move this percentage. And people don't feel that way. You mentioned people don't see the opportunities, right? You can't strive for something if you've never seen it.
Sure.
So there's plenty of people in this country who've never seen a man kiss a man.
Sure.
So when they see a man kiss a man on TV, they feel like you're shoving it down their throat because they've never seen it before. To them, it's the most appalling thing ever. But in more progressive areas, it's normal. I guarantee you we'll see it tonight. Guarantee you. Not going to bother me. But by the same token, you know, if I say something to my friend that offends you, I'm sorry. It's your feelings. You know, I'm all for if you got such a problem with it, step up, you know. But that's gone because that becomes, you know, when I was growing up, if you said something out of line to somebody, they fucking smacked you. You know, and if you deserve the smack, you got it. And you got up and you walked away and you go, I respect you now. But I don't respect you if you just want to change words because you don't like them. That's just the way I was brought up. That's just the way I feel. I'm a sticks and stones guy. And
sure, and that's perfectly fine. And I'm not going to sit here and try to change your mind because clearly I'm not going to be able to.
No, but I feel I'm
but
100% comfortable with
but
gay
some
people.
of these words that you use faggot, for example, that was used as a derogatory term towards gay people. And now they're asking, hey, listen, this was used to really hurt me, intentionally to hurt gay people in the United States. Can you please refrain from using that? And so they're trying to solve this issue without having to smack you in the face. Because I shouldn't have to sock you in the nose to get some respect.
I would never call a gay person a faggot. I wouldn't do that.
But you're still using it to deride somebody, which means that to a community,
but so
it's
was
still
Guinea,
being
so was
used as
WAP, so was, you know, there's
and
all
people
these
fought over that. And guess why
And
they're
you know
not
what?
used
They
anymore?
still use the
No,
fucking word.
no, they don't.
Oh my God.
What, in a 1970s movie, or when we're
my
having a conversation like this and we want to pull an
Oh
old word out of
my
our ass
God.
to justify our point?
People
like,
still use
when
them.
was the last time you heard somebody called a WAP?
Or a Mick, or anything like that?
When?
Or a Guinea?
Or a kike?
Because
When was the last time you heard that word? Stop it.
Realistically,
The
not too long ago.
Anti-Defamation League would be all up your
Not too
ass
long ago.
because it's negative, because you probably hang out with a certain sector of individuals that harbors certain feelings about a community. Like, if you're still throwing around the word kike, like,
I'm
you
just
have a
explaining
problem.
why people feel like it's being shoved
It's
down their
evolution,
throat.
though, Len. Like, this is the other thing. Like, we evolve as people. We grow. The reason why those words have dissipated a little bit is because the Italian-American community gained status and stature, and they would no longer stand for you to sit there and deride them with words. They became CFOs and CEFOs and landowners and bosses, and bosses in a lot of different senses, you know, and that's called, you know, that's called progress. And now the gay community is making that same kind of progress. They're no longer relegated to the closet or to the bathroom stall at the roadside gas station.
And that's fine.
But it's a hard-fought battle. It's been years. It hasn't happened overnight. They've been fighting for a very long time.
But you ask why people feel like they're shoving it down their throat, and that's why, because the majority of this country has not been exposed to it.
I strongly disagree with the majority statement as far as you saying haven't been exposed.
It's a percentage. I mean,
but I don't think it's the majority anymore.
No. Okay.
Now, when we have the conversation about transgender and some of those things, I would say there's probably less.
LGBTQ is 7 to 9% of this country.
Yeah, that are actively living that and out.
They're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not being exposed to, because now you have the people like me, you, everybody in this room.
7 to 9%. So if you have 7 to 9% of a population.
Wait a minute. Hold on one second, Len.
What?
In our conversation with Joanna, remember when you were saying there's a ton of women in tech?
Yeah.
And it's that same percentage. So according to your math and your statistics, there's a ton of gay people in America.
Okay.
So,
7 to 9%.
so you trying to marginalize or minimalize the number now?
I'm not trying
because
to minimalize. I'm trying.
You're trying to say there's way less gay people than there are straight people, and the gays are trying to make the straights accept them, and you're not here.
They're trying. No, your whole thing is, why do people feel like they're shoving it down our
Your
throat?
argument doesn't hold up, though, because it's not a shoving down. It's that you're no longer 100% of the represented, group. Like, you're talking about one gay person on a TV show on an ensemble cast of 12. One gay person, they're shoving it down my throat. I can't take this.
You're talking about every show that's on regular TV.
Oh, my.
Every show that's on regular TV.
That there's a gay person on every show?
No.
There's a gay person, guess what, everywhere. I promise you, in every office, there's a gay person, in every restaurant. So guess what? That's equal representation. That's actually how it should be.
I agree.
This is
great to watch.
I have no issues with it, and you know that.
No, but you do have
issue is...
You have an issue with them taking your
you
words.
Do you want the people that are saying you're shoving this down my throat to understand? Or do you want them to just continue saying you're shoving this down my throat?
Well, look,
because if you paint
ideally, it's understanding. But the things that the LGBT community are going about to try to get people to understand, they're saying, you're shoving it down my throat. So, by representing a healthy gay relationship in a TV show, or a healthy lesbian relationship, or a healthy transgendered individual on TV, that is... in a way, that is the best way to educate the population through our media. That is the best way to normalize it. And that's where you say we're seeing pushback. So how else can we go about educating our population and getting people more comfortable that, hey, us gay people, we exist. We're out here and we are queer. How else can we go about that if it's not through the media? And yes, people are going to feel like, oh, you're shoving it down my throat. And you know what? This is going to sound a little inflammatory. I think those people should get with the times, because we exist and we deserve dignity and we deserve respect.
There's no problem with the...
And have always. And to those communities that swear they've never seen a gay person, they have.
They just didn't know.
They're just not comfortable enough to come out.
Uncle Bob.
Because of bigotry. Uncle Bob is probably gay. You know what I'm saying? Usually the ones, what is it? Thou doth protest too much. That's why half of our, anyway, whatever. Len, you're the one that pointed out that we could have this great conversation about this. And my question to all of these people, because I hear them, I just would like for somebody to actually give me a valid, hardcore, answer that I can go, you know what, you made a great point, aside from, oh my God, you're now on television. Because the same people that are saying that about gays are also upset that they're seeing, diversity in the couples in their commercials.
Yes, it's interracial. It's all of it. It's all of it.
God forbid. God forbid we have equality in the greatest country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But, the people who are mad about this,
You need to watch Newsroom about the greatest country in the world. The clip. I'll show you later.
But we should have equality, and that should be normalized. It's still illegal in some
places. It should be normalized, but at what cost to the people who don't agree with you?
So we're making
at
people
what
feel
cost
uncomfortable.
To the
I thought you were the person that didn't like feelings.
Don't agree with you. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about in general.
No, but you just said people who are too sensitive.
Yeah, people
So
are
what
too
if
sensitive.
what if folks from the other side started screaming that? Because honestly, the snowflakery tends to come oftentimes from the extremists on the right who are so appalled at these new things they're seeing, and they can't take this great country of theirs evolving and becoming better and actually living up to the words in its constitution and on the Statue of Liberty, whether it has to do with immigration, whether it has to do with social justice,
Listen.
whether it has to do with
No,
equality
Let
for
me
all.
ask you a question, Lenny. Do you or do you not agree with the statement, fuck your feelings? Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on that.
Okay, so then why are you so adamant on protecting the feelings of the people that wish to discriminate against minorities, LGBT?
I'm
victims
not
of the
adamant on
LGBT community?
protecting.
But that's
their-
what you're arguing. You're
No,
saying,
but
these
listen,
people are saying you're
listen.
shoving it down our throat.
I am telling you that you have people that feel like you're shoving it down your throat, and you have people over here screaming and pushing it however much they need to push it. And I think there's a lot of things that could change in the way it's approached that could make these people come more into the middle. And we've talked about this, and it's the way you describe things. It's the words you use. I mean, we have the Don't Say Gay bill now. Don't Say Gay bill was labeled that by somebody. It was not what the bill was called. The bill
But
was,
it's literally
But listen,
what
I
the bill
understand what it is, Kimmy, and
I'm not implemented.
I'm not talking about the bill, okay? Right, wrong, or indifferent. The bill is the bill. But somebody labeled it Don't Say Gay.
Yeah, a bigot.
And when you label something, don't say, it was not the government that did that.
I said a
label.
bigot.
Yeah, whatever. So when you label something like that, and then the media picks it up and runs with it, you automatically are gonna have fucking controversy.
Yeah, but
You're gonna have controversy.
Okay,
And
but
I have the
but
same
how
thing with
much
critical
is-
race theory.
Yeah, but how much of that controversy and that inflammatoriness is coming from a media giant who knows that this is profitable, and how much of that is coming from the actual LGBTQ community?
It doesn't matter where it's coming from.
Well,
People
I'm
are
saying,
buying
as-
into
as
it. People
someone
are
who
buying
is-
it. I totally believe that it's not all the LGBT community that's pushing this. That it's a media
But again,
outlet
you're
that's pushing it.
but this still feels like acquiescing. So again, we don't label it what it is. It literally is a bill that has made it where we cannot say gay. We cannot talk about,
I just
anything
told you,
outside
it's
of.
not about the bill.
I get it, but you're trying to tiptoe. Again, you're the guy who says,
No,
fuck
I'm
your
trying
feelings.
to make sense. I'm trying to make sense. Critical race theory as taught in school. If you call a class in a public elementary school, critical race theory, people are going to fucking get an uproar. If you call it social studies, which is what the fuck it is,
Oh my God. But
then
no, Len, it's not though, because we have social studies and it's not teaching critical race theory.
That's
and
the
critical
curriculum.
race theory is only outraging people who are too ignorant to actually be able to define critical race theory. Geez, the critical assessment of race in America.
But you're using words that fucking aggravate people.
Why do they aggravate people? Those are very
It's because
basic
you're
Webster
on the left
Dictionary
and you don't
words.
get why it aggravates you, but the people on the right do.
Why though? What is inflammatory about critical race theory? Just think about
I
it from
can't
an
believe you
academic-
can't
no.
just understand.
No, I
that.
can't
If you
because it's
called
ignorance.
if you called it social studies that has to do with sociology, and you made a curriculum that worked, and you didn't
No,
call it critical
'cause you
race
know what they
theory,
do?
99% of it would have went
Bullshit.
right through.
Bullshit.
We're just trying to understand you. We're here to find middle ground.
Yeah.
But this isn't productive. So please.
We've had this argument 10 fucking times.
See, I obviously cannot understand it. So can you just break it down for me? I am a dummy liberal. Can you just break it down why critical race theory is inflammatory, or why?
Why is faggot inflammatory to you?
Because it has historically been used.
Because people.
No. It has historically been used to be a negative word used to put down gay individuals. Critical race theory, what has that done to the Republican Party?
First of all, this has nothing to do with the Republican Party.
Okay.
So what is
Listen, how about let's just say,
What has it done to white Americans
What has
who
it
don't
done
like it?
to? Yes.
yeah, people because of the
Explain.
way it's spun. The same as the Don't Say Gay bill.
So,
The
so
don't-
is
the-
your issue with these topics, or is your issue with
I-
how
first
the
of all-
media has treated it?
First of
'Cause
all,
those are
I don't have an
two-
issue with either of these things. I have an issue with the way they're spun in the media, which causes people to go like this. That's what I have issues with.
Okay,
Critical race theory drove the fucking right side bananas.
But why?
Don't say gay drove the left side bananas. Call it something else. Somebody stand up from the gay community or the fucking whatever community on this side and say, let's really look at what this is. No, they take it and somebody spins it and then
But
boom,
again, it's
we're left and right.
acquiescing because these are actually very straightforward and appropriate names, titles for things. Like, again, critical race. I for the life of me, it's not the name. Lenny, though, it's not the name that outrages people. It's literally the curriculum. It's the content.
Yes.
And the Don't Say Gay bill is exactly
And-
that. They were
and
dumbing it
if
down
you-
because people couldn't read bill number 75253, education,
Yes.
whatever.
I get it.
So
I
so
get it. But if you took the curriculum and you said, hey, we're going to work this curriculum into our social studies, into our sociology,
But
and
Len,
not...
being nice, I understand where you're coming from, but that's why we're where we're at. Like, this, Jim Crow was this 50 years ago, right? White people weren't comfortable with black people being in their space, but they had to make sure that they had equality, so it was separate but equal, right? And we know it wasn't equal. So we did it to acquiesce. We acquiesced to bigotry and hatred back then, and we're doing it again just in a different way now, and that's why we're not making any progress. And the people who are still super outraged and inflamed, that sounded crazy, tend to be the people who already lived through this shit, which is what's even more mind-blowing to me to begin with. Like,
do you want to know why it's the people who lived through the shit? Because it was shit then, and it's shit now, and people are just doing it to fucking divide us. And until people start fucking figuring that out, and
There are
decide
real
that
problems,
tomorrow
though.
this is
lost
not
it there.
going to be a fucking issue. Tomorrow this is not going to be... Listen to me. What people are fighting over today, what people were fighting over 6 months ago, what was inflaming people a year ago is not going to be an issue in 6
Len,
months.
we've
There's
been
gonna be
fighting
a
because
new
it
one.
will be in the
Equality.
history books.
There's going to be a new one. What history books? Written by who? They don't
Jim-
take just
Jim-
history
Jim
down.
Crow, Jim
They
Crow.
erased fucking history in fucking Hollywood. They erased history in St. Augustine. They erased history all over South.
Perhaps, yeah.
So why? It's
fact is-
erasing history.
But Jim Crow was something that went down in the history books, is something that people pushed against. Equal marriage, that is something that will go down in history as something that people were against. And so now these bills will be a point in history that when we look back on these issues and the progression of acceptance, of equality, these will be the bills that we
Let me ask
study.
you this. Do you feel that by getting representation in every TV show and every commercial and everything that's on TV, do you feel like getting that representation for your 3% is not going to put your cause back, or 9%, whatever? Let's call it 40%. Is not going to put your cause back when the other 60 fucking percent of the people start going to the governor and changing the fucking laws.
But
It's setting every cause back.
it's not 60% of the people. We saw that shit in Kansas when they overturned Roe v. Wade, and when they left it up to the people in Kansas, they voted against a full ban on abortion.
That's fine.
So can I tell you, they didn't let Don't Say Gay come to us.
Don't Say Gay?
They put it through.
Exactly.
20 people in Congress.
Exactly. You know why? Do you know why it was?
Because it wouldn't have passed if you put it to the
Do you know
people, because
why?
we're actually not as bigotous as these bitches would like us to be.
Yes. But the people who are whispering in those fucking 20 people's ears are big enough to make a fucking change. Okay? You're out here going, oh, equal representation. No fucking problem. Now we're going to start putting fucking rules on it. Those rules would not be in place if people didn't feel like that was getting shoved down their throat. This state is half liberal and half fucking Bible Belt. And the Bible Belt is who's talking to the fucking governor. Okay? So when they feel like they're seeing things, and I'm not saying don't put anything out there, but it's every.
Lenny,
I
we
guarantee
wouldn't have a
you-
country if we didn't push back. Like, if
Okay, listen. All I'm telling you,
the Patriots
all
didn't
I'm
say,
telling you is
balls
look at
to
this.
the wall,
all
go
I'm
fuck
telling
yourself,
you,
King George.
Okay,
where would
so
we be?
so listen. I'm just telling you, the more you go after the people who are in charge, which is still religion in this country, it's still religion in this country. The more you go after them, the more states are going to put down these rules and regulations
But it's not
that are going to
representative
set the causes
of the
back.
actual people in their states, though. And I get what you're saying.
It doesn't matter if it's representative of the people in their states.
It's mind-blowing to me, though, Len, that you don't actually hear yourself when you say this, because you're a person who is all about power and people and making change and all of these things, and you're fuck your feelings and I'm going to say what I'm going to say and I don't give a fuck, and it's the pussification of America. Acquiescing to these people is a pussy ass move. So you would like for us
acquiescing.
No, it is
and
though.
changing
Lenny,
your strategy is two different things.
Changing your strategy. This has been happening for 50 years. We have fought step by step to get more and more rights. If what you're saying is true, maybe don't kiss each other in public.
No,
maybe
that's
don't
not
have
what
so
I'm
many
saying.
people. No, you're
That's
literally
not
saying,
what I'm saying.
take that gay person off of that show. Let's
Yeah,
not have a RuPaul's Drag Race.
I'm failing to see
Like,
how
It's-
having representation will set us back. Because
I'll tell you, it's very
with
clear in the state of
conversation with
Florida
people-
how. It's very clear in the state of Florida how it will set you back.
I think
because
that's just,
that
I think that's
bill-
just bigots spending a lot of money.
That bill was caused by people screaming in Tallahassee that have no fucking concern about South Florida. They don't live here. They don't spend any time here. They don't do anything here. This is a very open and liberal place, and fine, everybody's comfortable.
So if your issue is the strategy, what strategy would you suggest?
I don't know. I can't tell you that. I can't give
Lenny-
you that answer, but seeing what's causing this kind of stuff to happen
find it hard to
might be
believe. But I find it hard to believe that if you were gay yourself, or the parent of a gay child, or a transitioning child, or if you were a minority or had a minority child, and when we talk about things like social justice, that you would just take it on the chin and that you would redirect. I find it very hard to believe that even if it came to your guns, you will fight tooth and nail to hold on to. And again, I am not anti-gun, and I want to be very clear about that. I'm just using it because neither, obviously you believe in
I'm not
regulation.
fighting against this.
No, but you're basically telling people like to chill the fuck out, like to back up a little bit, ease up. You're pissing people off.
I'm telling people that when you poke the bee's nest,
MLK did that.
things come back. It happens.
But MLK
How are we
did
going
that.
to take down the bee nest if we don't poke at it a little bit?
Listen, I think it should be done in different ways. That's all.
But in what ways? This is literally decades in the making.
Yeah.
You just have a generation now that
It's
is
like the
growing up
climate. It can get reversed like that if something if a catastrophe happens.
Can I tell you something like
We're getting
I get
this
it.
country's getting fucked while we're fighting over this. That's what's happening. Okay? This country is getting fucked while we're fighting over gay rights, race problems,
what
whatever
should
the
we be
blip
fighting
was for
over,
2
though?
years.
Because-
What we should be fighting, we shouldn't be fighting. We should be fighting over
but
we should be fighting against
The people
the
that are
people who-
passing bills without
yeah,
letting us
the
vote
people
on
who
them.
aren't doing anything. The people who are getting elected to office and doing whatever the fuck they
But the
want to
thing
do.
is, but if people step back and don't make noise, then for the other folks who are disengaged from the process, they don't think it's a big deal. Like, there's a reason why we march in Washington. There's a reason why we have protests. There's a reason why that shit is protected in our Constitution. It's because for folks that it's not necessarily impact. Like, I hate to say it, where there's a middle, though, you're still forced in some situations to make a decision. I'm not going to say pick a side, but you're forced to either say I care about this or I don't. I care about people in this way or I don't. It's not worth my time. It's not my fight. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what the making noise is about. It's one of those things that we've realized that there is power in number, and together we can really, affect change. But to your point, if they don't know in middle America that, they are literally trying to take away health care for transgender individuals, or if they don't know somewhere that there are women being left to bleed to death because they can no longer get medical attention, not just for an abortion, but for a miscarriage, that was no fault of their own. Like, if they don't know these things because it's not impacting them directly, or they live in that area where there's no gay people, BS, if there's gay people, I promise you. and we're not making noise about it, and they're not somehow seeing a blip of it on the news or getting it in their newspaper or seeing it on their feed, whether it's outraging them or not, they're talking about it and they know that it's a problem. So I'm going to have to disagree with the whole back off, quiet down a little bit, you're poking the bee's nest, and just, hope that continued conversation. My biggest fear is that we won't last long enough as a country for the next generation, for people.
When that bill was named, Don't Say Gay, how come nobody read the bill from top to bottom?
I read the bill from top to bottom.
And said something different. Said, okay, this is what it is. I think we should try to get them to change this, and this.
But that's what but that's literally what the bill, it was very cut and dry. And literally, and you and I have discussed it, it was initially, like you said, it was fear-mongering. They targeted a very kindergarten through third grade. And you and I both read the bill and we said, this is a much broader scope bill. You know what I mean? But they really honed in. But no. It's really for kindergarten to third grade. But that very next sentence said, or anytime it's deemed inappropriate. And in Miami-Dade County, we just saw them use that bill to deny acknowledgement of LGBTQ History Month in Miami, of all places, based on the Don't Say Gay bill for a curriculum that was meant for 12th graders.
Yeah.
So a bill that got pushed through off of the backs of parents out here fearing for their children's morality or whatever it was just used to 100% demean, demoralize, and illegitimize the LGBTQ community. 1,000%.
Okay.
And that's heartbreaking.
I get
in
it.
a city like Miami, that is predominantly blue. So again, it goes, I understand your point. I'm
so
not.
Is that a setback to the LGBTQ community?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is. And it's the feelings of these people is coming from outside of our area. Those things that legislation is being mandated by religion and the religious Bible Belt that's in this state.
We're a nation, literally separation of church and state. Like, this is a country.
Is there anybody
founded
filing
by people
lawsuits against the state for it?
I mean, I'm sure that there are.
I haven't heard of any.
I'm
But if there is, that should be what's going out in the public.
Well, no, but you realize that there's still laws on the books here, though, from like the 40s that reference men dressing as women as a public nuisance and are illegal. It's a law from 1947. And that was what the governor used when he came for our house, right? The drag brunch that we have here. Mm-hmm. But my point is, that's not even church. Like, that's got nothing to do with church. That's
but
not,
it was
that's
was
not the
when
religious,
it was written.
That's not.
It was when it was written.
But it's also that, in the UK, it was illegal for men to be gay, but it was not illegal for women to be gay. So men have oftentimes been even more unduly persecuted, for being members of the LGBTQ community historically around the world, never mind, women. And we understand what that is in this country.
And they're still persecuted in a lot of countries.
Well, in this country, they're still clearly
they're killed
issues.
In other countries.
So that makes it better?
Yeah,
no,
they're
I'm just
killed
saying.
in this country too. The expected lifespan of a transgendered individual is like 35 because of the amount of hate crimes, suicidality, the unacceptance in this that's still happening here. And to say, oh, well, we're so much better. Like, look, we're not just murdering you. And
we're not stoning you in the
town
square.
We're not just stoning you. No, we need to do better. We know better, so we are held to a higher accountability standard.
Why is it bad to expect that of this? Like I said, I'm a person who cries at our national anthem. I love the American flag. I support our military. I am always here for law enforcement. Like, I'm for all of these things, but I do have very high expectations for this country. I want us to be the best. I want us to live up to the standard and to the ideology that we have perpetuated throughout the years. And we are falling short. When you sit back and you watch, what our peaceful protests get blown up and the National Guard is there, when you watch an insurrection on our nation's capital, like, there's just wild shit happening. And I know, Lenny, your point is it's puppeteers pulling the strings. But at the end of the day, there are really bigots in this country. There are really people that have hate in their hearts.
There's bigots, there's racists, there's all kinds.
But they don't get to win.
And but listen, it's on all sides. Racism is not a one-sided thing, okay? It's not. I don't want to even get on that topic. It's not a one-sided thing, okay? And yeah, our country's fucked up. It is what it is. But we're not fixing it, and
I don't accept that though. Like, and that's where the noise comes from, and that's where the fight comes from. Like, I don't accept that. Like, I feel like there's a little bit of like, fuck it and finger pointing and it's them trying to make us fight. But at the end of the day, we're still fighting with each other. I engage people in conversation all the time. I've been called out my name like on social media for my views, and again, it's you're a snowflake, and I just laugh because I'm like, wait a minute, do you hear how you're speaking to me? Do you see how ridiculous your level of dialogue is? Like, but I'm the snowflake. Like, but I'm the one in my feelings. Like, actually, you're the one coming for me and not using your big words. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Like, I expect better. And at the end of we're still fighting with, like, I don't know that people can force you. I can't give the media that much credit. I can't give my Instagram timeline that much credit when we're talking about humanity and equality and just something being right and something, being fundamentally wrong. If it doesn't affect, like, who people love doesn't affect you.
Right, wrong, and indifferent. That's not the question. That, I believe people should be able to live with how they want to live. They can do whatever they want to do. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. I don't care if they do it in front of me. It doesn't bother me. But people are taking it to extremes. And if you keep taking it to extremes, it's going to keep blowing up in your face. It's going to blow up in your face.
How is the LGBTQ community and minority
It's not the LGBT community. It's not the LGBT community. It's the millions of people that are supporting it and putting it out there and doing whatever. It's just, it's the same on both sides. You have the hate and the religious groups on this side going against Roe v. Wade. You have them going against
But you realize
gays.
The only extremists in this calculation are the far right religious individuals that really want to push back against people.
But do you really feel that? Do you really feel that way? Do you really feel like there's no extremist on this side?
That me being
you feel like there's no extremist on the left?
There's certainly
is there no extremists on the left?
There are extremists on the left, but these two topics that we are discussing, both of the extremism, all that the left wants is some respect and some goddamn dignity. The right is, the right is a blanket statement. I know there's a lot of, Republican individuals that support the LGBT
1,000%.
Absolutely, and I'm never going to say that otherwise. And there's a lot of absolutely incredible right-leaning people that are not racist too. But this far right, and it's this deeply religious group. They are the ones that are being more extremist in this. Me wanting to be able to marry who I want, have representation for my identity, and just be able to live and exist without the government saying that I can't do otherwise. How is that extreme?
And to her point, legitimately, her and her husband have decided that they don't want to have children. SCOTUS right now would like to weigh in on that.
They would.
They would like to take away her right to contraception, possibly, because that was a thing at a time where literally married people were not allowed to access birth control unless they could prove why they needed to, protect themselves.
I get it.
Well,
and they've discussed this.
I get it.
My chosen mode of birth control is an IUD, and there are senators that are trying to push against an IUD.
Well, so they're saying that they could technically cause an abortion if they failed and
right.
or whatever.
But so my husband is needing to get a vasectomy so that we can live our choices. And so why does my husband have to go through a surgery where he alters his body so that we can live in the choices that we want to live? Because I'm like, that is a fear that I have, that my mode of birth control will be taken away from me, or my ability to get birth control will be taken away from me. That is a fear for a lot of women. Yeah. I know many women who have decided to get sterilized since the decision with Roe v. Wade.
Holy shit.
Well,
but that we're even in that place.
I get it. But we need to wrap this up.
I know, but according to you,
that's a whole nother path.
I get that, but according to you, I would like to leave it on like you think people are just going to sit back and take that? You think in order to make others feel less attacked or affronted, we're just going to, peacefully have conversations amongst ourselves? Like, it's not going to happen.
Nope. It's probably not. And
it shouldn't. And it's going to take people like you and like Nestor and other men and other people who are not necessarily members of the LGBTQ community to come on board and at least lend support. And that's, Like that's the place, because otherwise this isn't even a country worth fighting for. Like if we can't live up to the basic principles of who and what we say we are, then we're no longer this country. And part of that is being vocal about inequality and about injustice. That is what this country is literally founded on. Might have had to do with taxes, but it's what this country was founded on. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Taxation and freedom.
I cannot understand anybody saying, you might want to reconsider this plan, or having told, I'm sure Martin Luther King was told many times, shut up. Like, you're making too much noise. Try a different approach. Be nicer. And he was the guy that was nonviolence,
Yeah. And listen, we can't go down this path now.
Okay.
We can't go down this path now. But
so we'll end on sterilization for women under the age of 30. Voluntary sterilization, because that's their only option left in America. Woohoo!
That's an interesting thought.
You're incredible, Harle. Thank you, Harle. Joe, for coming. I'm glad that we had the conversation. Len.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me on, by the way. This was fantastic. These are great conversations to have and get people's eyeballs in front of.
Yes.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate you. The great state of Michigan is lucky to have you. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, so is the nonprofit. Give out the name one more time so that people know it.
Oh, I prefer not to.
Oh, not to. Okay,
yeah, I prefer not to share my job.
Okay, yeah. Not a problem at all. Guys, like, subscribe, follow, share. Please leave your comments. I'm sure there are lots of things in today's discussion that have triggered people one way or the other, and we would love to hear all about it. Who knows? You may actually be the topic of conversation in a future episode, or possibly even a guest. Lenny could clearly use some support.
No, I'm good.
You just asked in the last one for support, remember? Didn't you want
I did.
a nice, like, a male chauvinist or something? I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, we would love guests on the right extremist side too. This is one of those things where we're like, hey, we'd love to see if we can find a little middle ground. I may throw a drink. I'm just kidding. I won't throw a drink in anybody's face.
All right.
I won't do that. But yeah, we're everywhere, and we'll see you next time on the ManTFup podcast.
Peace.